Dr. Vasconcelos had compiled a report. It talks about almost every one of the tall buildings that were in Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and probably buildings that we may not be aware of, but do have an influence with us. What he wanted to try to, his paper, which is published on which we've posted on 120's website, it really talks about what was behind the structures. And so let's look at one of the first buildings that he recognized. This is the Anorte building in Sao Paulo. It was built in the 1920s, and actually it was built in Rio de Janeiro. What's famous about the building, let me get back to these notes here, is at the time it was one of the first iconic structures built in Rio. Is a rectangular shape. It was started off to be a 22-story building, but they only came up to 20. It's one of those buildings that was built before building codes, so he kind of had to make his own codes his own specs as he did it. The slabs were at the time gigantic. They were 16.5 by 22 feet, but the thickness of the slab was only 2 3/4 inches. So the slabs were continuous in the direction of the smaller sides. The building now it exists today. It's part of the name came because it was the news building. At one time, there were antennas on top, and it became the broadcasting building for Brazil. The second building that he talked about was a Martinelli building. And this one has a little bit more of a history to it. It has 28 floors. It was the first skyscraper located in Sao Paulo and is 105 meters tall. It was planned in 1922. Construction began in 1924 and the building was completed in 1929. At the time it was built, it was the tallest building in Latin America, and at the time it was the largest concrete frame building in the world. The building has been since remodeled in 1975, and now it's used as a structure for the Associated Bank of Sao Paulo. The other interesting thing about it at the time was that it's had a lot of history about what they want to continue to do with it. They've been talking about, at one time they wanted to tear it down, but the city stopped it. And fortunately for us, the building is still there. The next building that he wanted to talk about was the Apollo Salvo. This is Castel Campana Palace. This is a building that is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Tentative List. The building was named after Gustavo Capanano, who was the first Minister of Education of Brazil. The building was bold at the time. It's considered to be the first modernist building built in the Americas. It was much larger it was one of the larger buildings that he ever built. The building, one of the issues he had with this building was trying to make sure that they could handle all the wind load. So you'll see the beams are constructed in a different way. And let's see what else he says. It was fascinating about again, what they were really focused on was trying to make sure that the building reacted to the waves, and he wanted to try to avoid using gigantic architectural beams. Another interesting building that was built in the same time period is the Salvo Palace that's in Montevideo, Uruguay. It was designed by an architect from Mario Palanti, who was an Italian immigrant living in Buenos Aires, and he built a similar structure in Buenos Aires. It was finished in 1928. It stands 300 feet tall and had an antenna, which again made it one of the tallest buildings in Latin America for a very brief period. The ornate structure of it all was considered to be, The structure has 30 stories, and it divided into two underground stories, 12 in the main building and 16 in the tower. The height of the main construction is 150 feet where the tower begins. The idea was the building was originally constructed to be a hotel. The hotel was supposed to be upper 7 stories, but that never came to fruition. The total concrete has 218,000 cubic feet, and and includes the foundation. The average thickness is 10 inches of concrete referred to throughout the building. The building was built by a German firm, and the construction was begun in October 1923 and concluded in 1925. The walls are made with concrete block, and the external walls are concrete. They wanted to try to reduce the load on the lower stories. So it was one of the iconic structures. It's considered to be one of the iconic structures in Uruguay. The Kavanaugh Building, which is in Argentina, was designed in 1934 by a local architect, Gregorio Sanchez, and was complete and opened up in 1936. It stands at a height of 120 meters, and the building is noted for its austerity of lines, the lack of external orientation, and the way it looks in prismatic volumes. It was declared a historic civil engineering landmark in 1994. Is considered to be one of the leading examples of international style of architecture. During its 60 years it's been around, it's had a number of different owners and different additions to it all, but basically it's still, the building looks just like it did when it was structured. Well, again, what the purpose of this talk was to really go back and remind us that remind us that what happens around, that concrete is well used around the world, that the history of ACI 120 is more than just what happens in the United States and Canada, and really to take pleasure in the structures that our workers have done. As I said, I try to take excerpts of the paper that's presented. If you'd like to have me send you a copy of the paper, text me to it, and I'll send you the copy of the PDF that contains a lot more of the details and presentation aspects of what Dr. Vasconcelos wanted to share with us. So